This is going to be an extremely busy month. I have to watch 104 soccer games, follow the pregame, the postgame, yell useless opinions at the TV. It's a lot. So I knew that when it comes to screening for colon cancer, the choice was clear. The Cologuard Plus test. It can be used at home and can only take 15 minutes, so I can do it during halftime and not miss any action. If you are 45 or older and at average risk, ask your healthcare provider about screening for colon cancer with the Cologuard test. You can also request a prescription at Cologuard.com.
Need a laptop that's built to perform and designed to last all day? Select Windows 11 PCs starting at $499.99 are now at Best Buy. Learn more at bestbuy.com. Best Buy. Imagine that.
You have your pure progression where no matter what, you're working through 1, 2, 3, 4. And typically you're going to want to use those when you lose vision on the defense. So you've got a hard play action, you've got a naked, and you're coming out and you're strictly working through that pure progression because, how can you know where the safety is when your eyes are to your fake on outside zone in the backfield, right? So pure progression.
Welcome to Football IQ on the Coaching Coordinator Network. This series is about a part of football that matters as much as anything we do as coaches, and that's football IQ. We spend a lot of time talking about scheme, technique, drills, and game plans, but at the end of the day, the players who separate themselves and the teams that play the fastest are usually the ones that understand the game at a deeper level. They can recognize structure, process information, anticipate what is coming, and make better decisions in real time. That's becoming harder to teach. Players today see a lot of football, but they often see it in clips, highlights, and short segments on social media. They're watching plays, but not always learning the game in full context. That's why we wanted to build this series. With Football IQ, presented by American Football IQ, we're going to talk with coaches and teachers of the game about how they develop smarter players, how they train recognition and decision-making, and how they help athletes truly understand what they're seeing. If you want to help your players see the game more clearly and play with more confidence, check out our partner, American Football IQ. They're building tools and resources that help players, coaches, and parents grow their understanding of the game. The link is in the show notes. Let's get into today's episode.
Best gift ever!
A Lego set is a gift that always clicks. And clicks.
Woo! Next level!
And clicks. For kids who love gaming, choose a Lego set. The gift that always clicks.
Welcome to Football IQ on the Coaching Coordinator Network. Football IQ isn't just plays, it's anticipating defenses on offense, reading routes as a defender, spotting stunts or blitzes before they land. When everyone's fast and strong, the sharpest mind on either side of the ball wins. That's what we're exploring today with the true master. Joining us, Nate Longshore, former Cal quarterback, college coach, and founder of the QB Method, a 4-year starter at Cal. He led the Golden Bears to a 2006 Holiday Bowl victory. After coaching college football, he launched the QB Method, where he's developed quarterbacks from the high school level all the way to the NFL level for over 20 years. Nate, thanks for coming on, man.
Thanks for having me. Cool setup and always fun to catch up with you and talk some ball.
Yes, sir. I think we met for the first time. I've heard your name, obviously followed your career a little bit. I'd played against Cal before you got there, I think the year before you got there, and kind of watched you play. And I've always been a fan from afar. Got to meet you and hear you speak at the Glazier Clinic earlier this year. I think you do a great job talking ball, man, and making it fun to learn. That was one of the big things that I saw from your session. You played some Red Hot Chili Peppers. Where did that come from?
It came from, as coaches, we're teachers, right? And you try to find ways to, the goal of what we're trying to do is get what we have in our head into the kid's head as fast as possible. And so anytime I can find little tips or tricks or hacks to help that process. I forget exactly where I heard it or saw it. I should probably go back and make sure I sourced this properly. But there was, if you could activate the different senses going into a learning environment, whether they experimented with smells or sounds, but sounds kind of got them in the mode of, okay, this is what we're going to do. And if you think to like going to your favorite hotels or whatever, and they have that scent when you walk in and you're like, oh yeah, I'm here. So it's a similar theory to that, just prepping their mind for, okay, this is the mode. We're transitioning into this learning phase. And we use it a lot during game prep, like leading up to the game. And my kids, I don't know if they had even ever heard Red Hot Chili Peppers before we had started doing this, but I would guarantee if you hit all of them now, it's on their playlist. And when it probably comes up, they immediately go into game prep mode. We're about to do a walkthrough. Is this the red zone walkthrough or is this the third down walkthrough? So it's just a fun little way to, keep my ADD distracted. And there is a little bit of a coaching point to it.
I love that. Yeah, I know going through those early childhood development courses in college and learning about, how people connect information and, you hear about kids talking themselves and that's part of the development. And, I know for me, studying and listening to music has always been a big part of my strategies. That's awesome. So Nate, talk to us about your early time as a quarterback. Where are you from originally? And then when did you know you wanted to be a quarterback?
So I'm a little bit all over the place. I started as a basketball player. I didn't even play football my freshman year in high school. So I played basketball. We had went out my freshman year. I'd always wanted to play football, but freshman year I'd go out, and the high school I was at was running the double wing tee. And so I got there to freshman tryouts, and the coach is like, go ahead, put your hand right over there. My older brother was an offensive lineman. He played at BYU. He was a really good player. So they just assumed I was going to do that as well. And so it wasn't like now where you got the high school transfer portal and you find the system that's best. Like, no, you're going to the school up the street because you're walking. So yeah, I was like, I'll just play basketball my freshman year. Going into my sophomore year, the coach changed. New coach came in, and he's doing what you used to have to do to find players, is going and watching all the other sports on campus. And so he's going to baseball games, basketball games, trying to see where all the athletes are. So he comes to a basketball game. Hey, man, come try out for the team. What position you want to play? And I'm sure sure, quarterback, come on. So I go out, and there's like 12 of one of the best high school coaches, I think, and the numbers probably back it up. He's probably top 10 in win percentage and championships and all that stuff. So I got super fortunate that he took over, and just through attrition and sticking with it and probably some stubbornness along the way I found my way to the field. And that year, so I went from not playing freshman football to starting on varsity as a sophomore and really still not having a clue what I'm doing. I think I had 7 or 8 fumbles because, when you're in practice, you fumble, you leave it, like, not a big deal. It's like kind of that first game of live action, like, oh, they're trying to try to kill me over here. A little bit of panic and some fear, but you got to start somewhere. So we made some improvements week to week, and I found that part really satisfying. And then from there, went and played at Cal. Back to Baron Rogers my first year, got to learn and see how to do it at the highest level. Then was super fortunate to have really good players. I think we led, for the time that I was at Cal, we had the most of any school, more than Miami, Florida State, Ohio State. We had more NFL players on our roster than any other school. And there were Hall of Fame guys all over the field between receivers and multiple running backs. We had multiple, Aaron at quarterback. We had D linemen, linebackers. It was pretty. You don't know that's the talent you're around when you're in it, because we're all just competing every day and trying to make each other better and really just trying to get some bragging rights in the locker room, right? And as everyone goes on to, that guy, they're taking him first round. Oh, he was that, you start to realize, like, man, our teammates are pretty good. Everyone seems to really like them. So it was a pretty special time there. And then got into coaching, and that was always something I really enjoyed is the mental side of the game, if you will. I was never the fastest. I was big, but I was never the fastest, and I could throw the ball well enough that if they were open, I could hit them. So yeah, man, that's a little bit of the journey.
And so when you were recruited to Cal, who was your main point of contact? And then, at what point did you really start interacting with Coach Tedford?
It was Coach Tedford the entire time. It was interesting because he had just got there from Oregon, and this was before offers early. Like now, 7th, 8th, 9th graders get offered. at the time, it wasn't really the thing. They start recruiting you your junior year as they try to fill out their board. But Kyle Bowler, who played at Hart High School, who was my high school's rival growing up, and I was always the ball boy at the high school. So, because my brother played, so I went and would be the ball boy on Friday night and just try to get yelled at like everybody else. But so Kyle Bowler, he ends up playing in an all-star game with my brother. So I was a huge fan because that dude could throw it a mile.
Yeah.
And
he still looks like he could play. He lives in Carlsbad where I live.
Yeah, he's one of the originals, man. He can play. I'm sure of it. But he calls and says, "Hey, I'm with Coach Tedford at Cal, and he says he's got an interest in you. You should really do it, man. This guy he'll change your life." Like he's changed, and he went on to get drafted, right after that. And so he kind of opened my eyes to it after going on the visits and all that stuff. I knew that's where I wanted to be.
I remember, Coach Tedford changed the culture at Cal and really turned that program into a winning program. And I remember reading an article about how he worked with QBs. I'm sure there's a ton of stories about football IQ and how he developed that in quarterbacks. I remember reading that he had like a checkers game, or not like a little board game with the QBs where he would quiz them. What did you experience that? What was that like? And what was his main goal with that?
Yeah, it was just, you're trying to force interaction anytime you can. You try to give some type of stimulus and then get a reaction to engage with that curriculum. So his thing was, and they were like really rudimentary. He would buy the checkers in bulk and then grab a one of those whiteout pens and like, okay, this is a tackle, and draw a T on there. And this is and then he'd have someone hot glue gun a magnet on the back so that he could put them on the board. And so we're moving them around. I think it was just more efficient for him than watching us try to struggle and draw up the fronts and all that. Like if you see young players draw on the board, it's like infuriating as a veteran coach. There's not enough guys. They're not aligned properly. So I think that was his way of like cutting through the nonsense and like, okay, just move the checkers to where they're supposed to be, draw the routes. So it was a cool way. And I think he used it as his little litmus test as he would recruit and bring kids in like, hey, show me your favorite play on the board. And just, it was a good way to interact with the learning.
That's awesome. What were some of the big things that he would harp on, as you guys prepared? Did he have any type of homework sheet that he gave you guys before you got his plan or got the staff's plan?
The game back then was a little different. The whole operation, back then there was a lot of the systems, there was no way for you to actually hit the field early. There was probably a 9-month, but realistically like an 18-month runway to really understanding the offenses back then. There was no headset communication. There was so much emphasis on pro style offenses back then across the board. There's only a handful of spread teams. There's only a handful of unconventional teams. So the quarterback was having to ID the front, set the protection, recognize the box count. Where's the leverage player? So we'd go to the line with 4 or 5 plays and then have to get the offense into the right play, the right motion, make sure the receivers understand who they're responsible for. Where's the protection issues? So you were like directing city traffic before the ball was even snapped back then. So to come in and hope you could learn the cadence and snap the ball and throw it, like that was the least of your worries. Like you had to figure out, okay, where's the mic ID on this? Who's responsible for that DB over there if he were to rush? Because now there's a safety over the top of him. And even in the run game, you had different checks like that. But what happened was as the transfer portal started evolving, and Coach Tedford will even tell you, and all those good coaches will tell you, is like the window for install shrunk. And so the last thing you want to do as a coach is, be prohibitive on who you can get on the field. If your best player can't get on the field, you're an idiot as a coach. Right. So, okay, what can we do? What can we neuter to get our best guys? What if he gets here in August and our first game's in September? Like that's happened. So, okay, how do we create a system that we can execute that? We can go to wristband. We can go to one-word calls. What's he familiar with? Let's just stick to zone and gap schemes, make it super simple. And so I think there's been, a lot of the romantics out there, like football is it's dumber now. It's like, well, it serves a different purpose. Like you have this headset communication, which now a lot of the direction can go straight through the coach who has 20 years experience of looking at the picture and the vantage point of a press box. So it's easy for him to get through the checks pretty quick. But at the same time, he can get those best players on the field so much faster than they could before.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. I mean, it's the way the game's gone. You got to adjust. And I think that's a great quote there. You're an idiot if your best players are not on the field. You got to find a way to get them on the field. I think that's wise.
No doubt.
As far as your early coaching journey, once you got done at Cal, and let me back up before that. What did you do after Cal as far as playing and still working to compete?
Yeah, so went and a cup of coffee, as they say, and really you're the coffee getter for everybody else that matters. But spent time with the Dolphins and the 49ers, no game action, nothing like that, just enough to get embarrassed in practice and like I said, do my duty as keeping the athletes primed up. But from there, started, I think I went and coached high school, did a little stint in arena football. I still don't know if I'm allowed to share that story completely. I'm not sure everything was on the up and up back then, but I might be the highest paid arena football player of all time, commensurate with the amount of snaps I took, which was 0. But it was a good experience. Got to play ball some more and enjoy the game. That arena games I almost think some of those guys should dabble in that in the off season. It just forces you to think so much faster because of how compressed everything is. Like imagine only letting your quarterback work from the hash to the sideline into the boundary. Like you've got to process a whole lot quicker. So that was a fun experience. But then coached some high school, started doing the training. From there got into college, and kind of the rest is history.
Absolutely. And so when you get a new client or when you got a new football player that came to your program, what was your normal protocol to test football IQ and to then, put forth a plan for that individual? Now I know you have to work as a group and you're installing and you're going off of that schedule, but individualistically, if that's even a word, how did you approach checking their football IQ and then developing them?
I think the first part is understanding where they're at. So 2 big parts. First is where they're at. Like what's your baseline? Is this your first introduction to the game? You watch it on TV, you kind of know what the announcer says, and you can go from that, which is, I mean, that's more than I knew getting into it. So I think that's a totally reasonable place to start and to begin. And then the second phase of that is, okay, what is most relevant to you at your stage right now? So if you're a youth player, is understanding the intricacies of coverage the most important thing in your development? Probably not, right? You're going to see a lot of man-to-man, and you're probably handing the ball off a lot. You should work on your perimeter throws because coach is going to call a lot of screens and just try to make sure they don't stack the box on you, So do they need to know why all that works? Probably not. But hey, this is what's relevant to you now, and we'll kind of grow together. And then, the second part of that is like what the team element is always what's most important. And I think sometimes the coaches of the different teams get a little weary of like, oh, my guy's working with somebody else. It's like, well, if that somebody else is really trying to magnify your team, and, as long as us as kind of outside help, I guess you say, understands like the team's success is really still the most important. And that's what I try to keep in mind as coming from that team side, coming as from a college coach these last few years. It's like, that's the first thing and the only thing that I'm thinking about is how do I help get this quarterback better for his team? Not necessarily like, I don't even care. Can you get on the board and wow everybody with your knowledge that your team doesn't even call it that. So it's always tried to tie it back to the team and kind of where they're at and what their needs are. And then in the off season, and then as that kid has more time for his own personal development, try not to get boxed into just what your team knows. Hey, how do we make it so you're a more complete player? The truth of the matter now is football is a transition game, like between coaches and players. Like realistically, it was great back in the day. I had one head coach in college. I was at one college the whole time. I had one head coach in high school. I was at the same high school the whole time. Like that is not happening anymore. And I'm not even sure I'd advise anybody to do it that way anymore. Like, your value is greatest when you have multiple suitors. So if I was a quarterback now, like, it'd be foolish to not entertain movement every year. And the coaches entertain movement every year. You've got Lane Kiffin had a great job at Ole Miss. It was like the governor and him running that joint, right? And now up and out of there. So it's like, even with the best intentions and the best plans, there's going to be so much transition, for the kid's got to take his development into his control. So I think that's kind of a new thing, but just new to football. I think across professional spectrum, like, professional development's been a thing for a long time, and just not being limited by where you're at in that moment, but trying to make sure you can chase where you want to go.
Absolutely. What type of tech do you use to, you train quarterbacks now, you do a great job training guys as far as the biomechanics goes, the mental side of the game goes. What type of tech are you leveraging to serve your clients?
That's a great question, because the default in me, I am a tech nerd. Like, I taught computer science, programming, like all of that. I love, like, all this AI stuff, the computer stuff, like just being able to enhance and have an exponential impact as far as efficiency goes as just one person is super fascinating to me. But at the same time, for learning, like, we launched there was the first Oculus Rift. They were not with Facebook. The thing was 30 pounds. You had to have a special computer to run it. Like, we ran a football simulator. We stole code from old video games to try to make this virtual reality thing 15 years ago. And so we would go out to schools and we'd go to NFL franchises. We set it all up. And then at the end, they'd look at us like, dude, this is amazing, but it just took you 2 hours to set this up. So who's going to run this? Like, are we going to just pay you to come out? And so it was like, my understanding of education has evolved from, like, what's the coolest, best way to do things, so what's the minimum barrier to entry to learning this information. And that's when it goes, for me, I love the old analog teaching tools. I love books. I love get a pen out and write it down. I think we all interact with so much digital content. Like, even this right now, me and you are having this conversation. I'm really just staring at a screen in my room, right? I've got my clothes behind me. My office is also my closet because I've got girls, right? So you get like one corner of the house, Dad, stay over there.
I'm in the garage.
So, anytime you can get back to, that's why I do love your flashcard system. Like, they're tangible, they're portable. There's not a lot of, the last thing these kids want to do is not even in the equation. The last thing they will do is open up an app. Okay. They'll get into it. They'll set it up. They'll format it. And then what's going to happen? A Snapchat notification is going to pop up. They're going to click. They're out of the whole. They're starting back over. And then, so kind of getting them off of that platform sometimes and getting them to lock into something, like I said, you've got the digital, the new age, you've got the analog, which is, can I touch it? Can I feel it? I think there's a ton of value in that style learning right now because it's so different to everything else that they're interacting with. So I've kind of gone full circle. I see the values of all of it. At the end of the day is it being efficient with time and effort and getting accomplished what you want to get accomplished.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, when we built out the flashcard system, my business partner, I've worked with his son since his son was in middle school and he just graduated high school. And we would do our web meetings and, do the football IQ, the classroom stuff, and take them through what I taught college quarterbacks and the high school quarterbacks I've worked with and the pro guys I've worked with. And he eventually was like, hey, we should go into business together and create these flashcards. There's really nothing out there. And he's the type of dad that'd buy anything for his son. He looked at everything that was out in the marketplace and he wanted to try to find something that was simple, something that can be taken on a camping trip or taken on an airplane. You could be on a family vacation, or just put the phone away, to your point, because every single one of us are in our devices now and we get distracted. And, I think it's a great tool. And I have a bin full of flashcards myself from grad school, from the different offenses I've had to learn, from, selling software to construction companies after I got out of coaching college football. I had to become a subject matter expert to a degree, right? on software and software as a service and selling to construction. So, I like the tangible thing. And that's something that you have as well. You have some tangible products and love that. I ended up purchasing your products and think they're very well presented. And so I think we're on the same wavelength there. Yeah, how long did it take you to build out what you built out? And was it just something that you knew you were going to do over the years? When did that come about?
Well, it's a collection of, I had been working on bits and pieces. We all do, right? As coaches, we're constantly making presentations, teaching materials, and then, you change one job or that computer, you don't have that computer anymore. Where are those files? I think it's on that hard drive. Well, that one got ruined in the flood in the house. So that hard drive actually doesn't work. So and by the time you go through the hassle of trying to find, I made that great presentation a few years ago. Where is that cover to? And you spend hours looking for it because you know how long it took you to build. And by the time you don't find it, it's been for it. So you just end up making it again, right? So you do that rigmarole a couple times and you're like, when you need something, you just make it again. So as coaches, we all have tons of files of versions and PowerPoint changes. So now I have a new version of PowerPoint and now it's Visio. And then Visio's charging lifetime subscriptions now. Now my old files won't even open. Just the nonsense of keeping all of that organized and all the folders and the names and the files. So it's like, I went through and I said, look, I'm not coaching right now. I have time. Let me put all of this in one place just so I have an easy reference for later. I don't want to have to, I need a cover 2 picture versus 3x1. Where is it? No, I have it. It's here. I want a butt shot from an over front with stacked linebackers. Nope, I have it. It's right here. So it was really for me to just be organized for whatever was next. And I had some quarterback guys getting ready for the draft. And that was always part of the process was, hey, I know you know a lot of this stuff, but let's go back to the universal language. So you're not in there calling it Speedo when, it's just cover 3 or whatever, right? Whatever language you use. So it's just a little bit of deprogramming as far as language goes. But it's funny because now, so it was pretty crazy. I probably spent, like I said, I have an OCD trait where I probably spent 10 hours a day for probably 100 days on that thing because I was originally looking for someone like, hey, let me hire, when you're coming from college, you have GAs like, hey, do this and then I'll check it. But what ends up happening is the time it takes to check and edit and make sure everything's right. You're like, you know what? This is I think I hired someone from India to draw one day and I got it back. I'm like, it's completely useless. You go on and you find those outsourced graphic design. I was like, forget it. I'd rather just learn it and do it. So every line in there, I drew every box, every shade, every word. There's typos. I don't care because I wrote it. And this was all before AI. Now someone could just make this in 30 minutes. Yeah,
I know.
It's I spent, there's probably 1,000 hours in that thing at least. And it's now anyone could scan it in and change some colors, do this, do that, which at the end of the day, it still was a great exercise for me. So if someone wants to have AI spin things up, I don't know if that equates to knowing something. And I see that with the kids a lot is they know that in their pocket is endless knowledge. So they just forget everything. Why do I need to remember this? If I need to reference this conversation, if I need to, go back and understand this material, I'll just ask this thing that's in my pocket. It knows, it's their second brain that's on them all the time. So I think they've, in a sense, become horrible learners just because they have this great resource in their pocket. So it's definitely an interesting time.
Yeah, to say the least. Yeah, I couldn't imagine being a student these days, and you're asked to write a paper, or you're able to source the information really quick and get ideas written for you, and then you just make your quick edits. But no, that's awesome, man. I could definitely relate to that story, and there's files that I want to go try to find, because as a GA, poured a lot of time into really trying to understand what was happening in the front. That was something I prided myself on. As a quarterback, wanted to then be an OC and really try to understand it. So, I've got respect for that and how much time that takes. You mentioned some VR stuff. I did some work with Reps VR. I think they've done a good job of creating a platform, really stemming from Dutch Franz's time as an operator in the military, and then getting his PhD at Stanford and working directly with the football program there. One of the things I learned from them was if you speak your progression out. So, say for instance, you have a spot concept or a snag concept, and your first read is a corner, and then you're going to the spot to the swing. What they do in their system is the quarterback will take their drops. It's an immersive environment. So it's 360 footage. It's actually footage from live practices or scrimmages. And the quarterback's able to drop back and look to see if the corner is open. So he'll say corner rip if it's open and he wants to throw it. And if not, he'll just say corner and then move to the spot. If the spot's open, he'll say spot rip. And then if it's not open, then he'll say corner spot and then swing rip, right? And there's science behind that, speaking the actual progression and then which route you're going to throw. Have you ever dabbled in any of that? Have you heard of that before? Is that something you've ever heard of?
So it comes from, I don't know where it comes from, but early when Bill Walsh and those guys put the West Coast offense together, one of the tools they built for the quarterback, they were called read sheets. And so within that read sheet would be the play diagram. Then there'd be kind of the protection rules, if we're talking passing game. And then kind of from there, the rhythm of the play. So I'm 1 to the flat, I'm 2 to the corner, I'm 3 to the, and so the quarterback's job was to rehearse those every night through the read sheet and speak through those reads. And when they would get really good, they would be able to speak it on the same rhythm that it would happen out on the field. And so they tried to keep all of their concepts within those certain categories. And now, because of the way that the defenses are run, and just being so complex and just trying to force confusion on the offense, the progression game has really grown, just because they don't want the quarterback stuck in a spot like, well, I couldn't really tell what defense they were in. So you get these systems that are just strictly into the progression game. Like, we don't want to get beat by sim pressure. We don't want to get beat by these exotics. So let's just work through these reads. And yeah, it makes sense that you're speaking through the progression within the VR. Does Reps VR, do they record like the computer can hear what you say and then it gives you a score?
Yes, sir.
That's
so
cool.
You could build out as you're building out these plays, you could put in the prompts and then the time frame that you want these prompts to be spoken. And if they're supposed to throw the corner route, then they have 1.8 seconds to make that decision to 2.2 seconds. Once they go from the snap to the catch to the top of their drop, right? That's just an example. And then if they're supposed to run it, then it exhausts the entire progression. And you got to verbalize that, and then you got to verbalize run for you to get a passing score. And they have like a trophy system to where you've passed it, you've practiced it, or you're unpracticed. And so there's a gamification element to it as well. And it was cumbersome at first for me to set it up, kind of to your point. But the technology has gotten better. It's become more streamlined. I haven't actually sold the system for probably a couple of years now. I've been working on other things, obviously, but I'm interested in it. I'm interested in trying to find the best way to communicate to kids when I'm out on the field with them. To your point earlier, trying to understand what they're doing within their system and be really a gap filler. That's how I look at myself. Try to fill gaps where gaps exist, not try to step on toes. And so that's just part of my journey, trying to learn and get better as a coach.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. So did you have anything else to say on that before I ask the next question?
After being in that space for so long, the immersive thing is super cool. After getting beat over the head with, why does the quarterback need to see behind themselves by all these I was like, that's a great point. Why can't we just do the same thing on a big screen? He's like, I got 47 projectors in this building. Why do I need this contraption where they look? Well, yeah, that's a good point. If he's looking behind himself, you're probably in a bad spot to begin with. So I do think there's elements of all of that to for a player on his own, he probably doesn't have 47 projection screens at his house. The VR is probably the answer. But if you're in a facility, it's like, if you've seen that Texas Tech film room or the Nebraska film room. Like, to me, like, that's the best. Like, you get you start linking projectors together, and the quarterback is physically standing there with the ball and going through the drop, and his coach is there. And like, we built a pretty cool system in Baltimore that was like that in their basketball gym where the projectors were all linked up. It was big time. Like, I was like, okay, yeah, this does beat VR, but no kid has this at their house. So like, there's a purpose for everything.
Well, the way Reps does it now is they'll put the camera on the front of the helmet, and the quarterback's able to go through his pre-snap operation. And so his visual mental checklist, he can go through all of those before the ball is snapped. And there's a timing element there too, where he's got, if you socket safeties, overhang corners, or if you go roof corner, alley box, or however your pre-snap checklist is, the coach could set that up in the system, and they could get tested on that, and they're able to look. And when we're coaching from the bird's eye view, or even like behind the quarterback, we don't get the exact same look that the quarterback has, right? From the shooter's view, to use Dutch Franz's background. And so there's objects in the way, there's distractions in the way that we can't see from these other views. And I think it's got to a very pretty powerful place. And if used correctly, and if you have the resources to put all the prompts in on the back end, then it's great. I've never been in one of those big rooms. And then also to go back to VR, I spent some time with the Jets last off season, and I know the OC had put the camera on Justin Fields' helmet, and he just wanted to hear Justin communicate. He wanted to hear him. Even during a play, you could hear Justin say, "Oh, that was a wrong route," or like the wrong depth. And for my buddy Tanner, that was good for him to kind of see and hear Justin's progression through the offense, because it's a new offense for him. But yeah, it's pretty interesting stuff.
So he'd make him talk through it during practice?
Yeah, he would listen. So it's a different system than the one I was talking about, but he would like to go back and listen to the play call, to the way that he spoke in the huddle, the way he communicated, anything that he could pick up to try to understand, like, whether he was picking up the offense or not. And so there was things that I witnessed when I was in his office watching with him that gave him some optimism about the development, right, of the quarterback in the system.
Gotcha.
Yep. Today's episode is presented by American Football IQ. One of the biggest challenges coaches face right now is this. Players are seeing more football than ever, but they are not always learning how to understand the game in full context. They watch clips, they see highlights, but they don't always learn how to recognize coverage, identify fronts, understand leverage, or connect what is happening before and after the snap. That is why tools that help teach football IQ matter. American Football IQ is built to help players learn the game visually through flashcards that train recognitions, coverages, fronts, protections, gap control, the kind of things players have to see faster if they want to play fast. This is not just about memorizing terms. It's about helping players recognize patterns quicker, process information faster, and play with more confidence when the ball is snapped. So whether you're coaching quarterbacks, skill guys, linemen, or just looking for a better way to teach the game, check out American Football IQ and see how they are helping players build real understanding that carries to the field. You can start with Volume 1 or get the full bundle at AmericanFootballIQ.com. There is also an online community that can be accessed on the AmericanFootballIQ.com website, where each flashcard has a video explaining it in more detail with film. Play fast. So transitioning, quarterback read types. I know we talked about your pure progression type reads and the why people are going to those. People are able to put all these modifier tags, and they're able to have split field coverages and really have the right answer versus the formations and the situation that they're in, right? But what type of read types do you teach to quarterbacks?
So to me, there's really three categories. You have your pure progression, where no matter what, you're working through 1, 2, 3, 4. And typically you're going to want to use those when you lose vision on the defense. So you've got a hard play action, you've got a naked, and you're coming out and you're strictly working through that pure progression, because, how can you know where the safety is when your eyes are to your fake on outside zone in the backfield, right? So pure progression. Then you have your alert progression. which is what all these new systems are. Okay, here's your alert, right? If you've got access in a matchup to this number one receiver over here who's running the corner, who's running the option route, whatever it is, you're going to throw that alert. And typically that goes to your best receiver. He's probably on the singled up side, but that's going to start your read. And you can eliminate it before the snap. Okay. But he's got access. He's got a free release, and he's got leverage to where he wants to go. That's what you're going to try to throw first. And then you're going to work through these other three in your progressive manner. And they typically time up where, okay, because the flat's getting to the flat first, that's your number one. And then you're going to sweep across the field, and we'll design it to where these routes time up. So that's West Coast offense to a T. That's what they're trying to do is build those alert progressions. And then you have the old school combination reads where you have some type of defensive dictation, whether that's, hey, here's your man beater, here's your zone beater. Here's your middle open beater versus your middle close beater. And then based on that dictation, you have a starting point with, let's say, curl flat, right? So if it's zone and it's middle close, you're reading curl flat. Perfect. What's my curl flat read? It's the flat defender, right? So regardless if they're buzzing or if they're clouding or whatever, the flat defender is your read. You throw away from him. And so those different read types. So you have your combination read, which is that traditional, okay, the if-then, if you will, to get to your starting point. And then you have the pure progression when you lose vision. And then you have your alert progression, which is 95% of all the drop back passing reads that you have right now. So, and within those, you can even get into those subcategories of, you could create an argument that there's really only 10 plays in football. Right? You've got your vertical concept, you've got your flood concept. If you start to break it down, like they all can fall into a handful of buckets. That's why you see guys like Phillip Rivers, like he's out of the game for however long. And they're like, well, how can he start? Well, he has so many years of all of these, as you get deeper into coaching, you try as much as possible. They say same as. So this play is the same as that one. So in their mind, they're like, you must know it already because it's the same as that other play we ran, even though it's not, but it's similar. So same bucket, you should be able to pick it up. So keeping things as similar, and hey, you can apply those other experiences, those other reps, that other knowledge to this play. And now you should have a better understanding of this play than just starting from zero. So I think within those three categories, you can get to where you want to go.
That's awesome.
Is that about how you see it? What's your thought process like on all that stuff?
Yeah, it's pure progression with an option. You have your half field reads, and then I'll categorize it. So let me drawing back. I'll say there's two different types of reads. There's a defender read and then area read, right? And if I have a specific defender read, it's a high low, inside out, outside in. Quick game is typically a defender read, right? You do have full field options on that. And then we go to area reads where I tell the quarterbacks, you've got to get your eyes set out in front of where that first route's going to go, right? On an area read, and try to simplify from that standpoint. And then you're essentially swiping across. And we got our triangle reads. We've got, we got our, like I said earlier, we got inside out, outside in, high low, and then low high. So that's how I've categorized it. I watched a presentation by Will Hall, the head coach at Tulane. Have you heard of him?
I've heard of him, yes.
He's got a solid presentation on quarterback read types. I mean, he goes into great detail on it. He's got his swipe categories where the first letter of a word, of a concept, will tell the quarterback whether they're going to be looking for any type of wheel route first and then swiping back across, or any type of pull route, like a diagonal route, like attack in the middle of the field and then swiping back across, or any isolation route. It's pretty detailed on how he does it. And then he'll have like split field concepts, and then like his isolation tags as well. And I think he's got 7 different read categories, which is like, probably don't need all that.
But if everything is one of 7, 7's not a lot. If all the plays fall into 7, that's not a bad deal for a quarterback.
So. Yeah, so It's a presentation I need to go back to
Right.
because I felt like it was really well organized, and you just put me on the spot. I'm like, I asked you the question, and then then I put
I
the
mean,
spot.
we're just spitballing here. We're just
No, it's good.
yeah.
No, I love it. I love it. Transitioning to some quarterback development stuff. I hear people all the time say, I want to increase arm strength. I want to increase arm strength. And some of the things that I say are make sure you're doing med ball work. Make sure that we're doing as much rotational work in the weight room, learning how to create ground force and then stabilizing our opposite side and then rotating through. And then we'll do a drill called long toss where we start off at 5 yards, throw just a level 1 throw, boom. After every throw, back up 5 yards from one another. And so you're just trying to progress until you get to your distance. And then I'll have them crow hop, kind of try to create a little extra distance. And then we start pulling it back and going 5-yard increments back. So those are some of the ways that I address improving the distance on a throw. What would you say?
I think, yeah, I like the long toss one. I think I think pitchers have proven that's a great way to warm up for velocity. So I think that's a good way to do it. Honestly, to me, it's the same question as I want to get stronger at power clean. Okay, let me see you power clean. And like every kid's going to have a different, well, here's your limitations. Right now, your flexibility is horrendous. You're never going to get able to lift that weight because your flexibility. So we got to start there. Like that's absolutely not going to gain 1 pound on your power clean. However, it's going to increase your potential for what's next. Okay. And so then quarterback to me is the exact same. You've got to go through and figure out where your limitations are and what are my hindrances and how significant are these hindrances? How old am I? Like it depends kind of how far along they are with their stroke and with their motion. Like you can get really good. Like that's the beauty of the quarterback is like you can be really good at being bad. Again, going back to Phillip Rivers, his motion is horrendous. There's not one person out there's like, you know how you should try to throw like him. Like that's not what anybody would say. However, the goal of quarterback is getting the ball to the receiver in a great spot. And he's elite at that. He's Hall of Fame at that. So his motion's beautiful. It's perfect. Like there's no other, like for doing the job, he nailed it. Like he's doing the job. And so it's like, you got to look at where these kids are on their journey. If they've got 1 million reps with a certain motion, dude, that's the motion. Like barring a broken arm, like what was that movie back in the day? Like Rookie of the Year where the kid breaks his arm and becomes a MLB pitcher, right? So barring catastrophic injury that resets your biomechanics, like, dude, this is where you're at. Like, watch all these NFL guys, watch their old high school tape. Dude, they're very similar, and they've all had tons and tons, hours and hours of coaching. And that motion is very similar to what their motion was in high school. Because once your body starts to build those routines and those motor pathways, like, that's okay. Now, within that, how do we optimize to get the ball to that open receiver in the best possible spot, preferably in the shortest amount of time? So I think, going beyond all of that and getting into, the perfect form, the perfect angle, the perfect release, like the perfect release is the ball that gets there right on target. Every Sunday you see, and this is the other end of the spectrum, you see all these crazy throws by guys. You see Caleb Williams fading away parallel to the ground when he releases it and the ball hits on the money. It's like, how is his form? His form is perfect. The ball hit on the money. Like there's no other metric that matters in football as far as completing the ball than did it get to the right spot for the receiver to make the play? So, it's like, you want a kid with beautiful form that couldn't hit the broadside of a barn? Or do you want the kid with the unconventional stroke that the ball hits perfect every time? I think for me as a player, seeing Colt Brennan just dissect teams at Hawaii with his unconventional stroke was like, that's when it hit me first. Like, wait a minute, this guy's throwing for 1 million yards. He's always on the money. His form looks a little wonky, but it doesn't matter because it's effective. So I think as coaches, we want to keep tinkering. And when you only know biomechanics or you only know a couple buzzwords as a QB trainer, like you're trying to force that down their throat when, no, man, if he's putting the ball there, like there's so many things to work on at the position. Like how's his, if the ref doesn't call PI, does the kid completely melt down and now you have no chance to win the game because he can't get that play out of his mind? Like, there's so many elements of the position that there's plenty of opportunities to coach.
Yeah, I know you had posted something recently about some traits of a quarterback, the physical, the mental, and emotional. And so that one would fall under the emotional bucket, right? Not being able to let a play, just not be able to push past a play and just keep on moving forward.
Most important play is the next play. And I think you get both sides of that with the 7-on-7 culture and with everything on Instagram. Sometimes kids get too wrapped up in celebrating. Your next 3 plays are horrible because you're so amped up from those celebrations before. It's like, you've got to know the most important plays the next play.
Yeah, it's interesting. I had to give myself affirmations, and I'd repeat to myself, patience, poise, confidence, patience, poise, confidence. I would journal after practices and games and just try to get my mind right because, the mind can wander. We all know that in our different vocations and avocations that the mind could wander, and playing quarterback, you've got to be able to be able to rinse and repeat, and I know there's some books that you actually suggested recently. The Inner Game of Tennis, that was a book that I read a while back, and that helped me just kind of simplify things and not overthink them, and just try to be, when they talked about that being one with the racket, and then even finding like a little bit of the white seam on the tennis ball and try to make contact with that, and just try to understand like how your wrist position was. And that helped me as a quarterback because there's a lot of similarities with that. You just want to try to make your stroke effortless and repeatable. What was the other book that you had on that? I know you had your defensive mastery. What was the other book that you had on that suggestion sheet?
I think the recent one was the Bruce Arians.
Yes.
Quarterback Whisperer.
And
he's pretty colorful guy. Like, and he kind of, for the knowledge that he has, he's super humble and like self-deprecating. It's an enjoyable read, more so on the relationship between quarterbacks and coaches and just getting through adversity together rather than like everything is life or death. There's some great gems in there. I mean, I think the one that like resonated for me is just like, throw it deep, man. What are we doing? Like, throw it, like put it out there, rip it. Sometimes we're all trying to be too perfect.
No risk it, no biscuit.
At the end of the day, man, you're at the beach and he's open deep. Just throw it out there, So I think there's value in some of that carefree mindset.
Unless you're the coordinator for a defensive-minded coach, which I've been pretty much every time I've been a coordinator.
You just got to know it's coming either way. So just when that happens, there you can do no right.
Yeah, I'm a baseball fan. Never played baseball, but I love going to the games. I'm friends with the Padres pitching coach and gotten to know him. But the psychology of that sport and not letting things bug you. You gotta be you're a superstar, and then you're striking out, and people are calling you a bum. Playing quarterback is similar to that, and being a play caller is similar to that as well. Because I have that same mentality of, hey, we gotta attack, and we gotta try to attack every blade of grass so that they're covering the deep throws, right? So I think that's good, man. What type of lessons do you think you could share with young quarterbacks as they're coming up? What would be the biggest piece of advice you would give to kids? I've got kids that are kind of middle of the road kids, or they're talented, they're good players where they're at. The families want them to get scholarship opportunities. There's not all these scholarship opportunities. I know you've written about that as well, but what piece of advice would you give, say, a kid that's going into their senior year? They've been a starter, but they don't have a scholarship offer yet.
I think there's been no better time for opportunities for quarterbacks than now. Whereas in the past, you had more high school opportunities that were cut and dry, but they were really life sentences, right? And they didn't know it at the time, and kids didn't know it at the time, but they were taking an opportunity that seemed secure, but it was a secure path to nothing. Whereas now, it's not as secure, but the opportunity is endless. So it's like there's actually less pressure on you coming out of high school to be in the perfect opportunity than before because of all the mobility and the opportunity. So there should be even less pressure. I think everyone's concerned with how little scholarships are available to the big schools out of high school for quarterbacks. However, I think you can see the amount of names that change at the top of college football quarterback list. Where was Fernando Mendoza last year as far as the hierarchy of QBs go in college football? He was probably top 25, not number one, right? And so now you look at the new crop of, okay, who's going to be at the top of the totem pole this? Probably someone we don't think right now.
Yeah.
Which is cool. That's not how it used to be. Like, right now, every year is a reset. The cream rises to the top. No matter where you're at or what your situation, you can go from junior college to starting in the big house in a couple of years. If you just stack good decisions, stack the work, just lock in, and, the coaches will find you. They all want to win. The best players the players that they feel give them the best chance to win are who they're looking for. So just continually create that, whether you had a bad break or an injury or coach didn't it doesn't matter, because one good year can reset that whole cycle for you. And now you're back on the path you want to be. I try to explain it to the kids. It's like playing a video game. Like, what happens when you die? You have to start over a little bit. Is the game over though? Like, you just die and the game shuts off and you can never play it again. Like, the opportunity you're at now is, okay, if something bad happens, you take a minor step back and you get to play again. You get to try again. Like, that, it hasn't always been that way. Sometimes, nope, game's over. See you later. You're done. So, and they kind of relate to that. Like, oh, okay, I play video games. I know how that goes. Like, yeah, it's frustrating, but doesn't mean you're not done, So yeah, I think it's a great time to be a football player.
Love the optimism on that. That's a good perspective. Appreciate that. This has been fun, man. It's been fun kind of going down. I had an original script, but I think just kind of going off the cuff was good. What type of things draw your attention outside of football? And then I'm going to ask you about a funny story after that. But like, what do you do outside of doing football related activities?
I really enjoy learning, as lame as that sounds, but just I'm curious by nature. So whether I've got plenty of people in my life that give me a hard time about, I'll get stuck on something and I'm not done with it till I'm done with it. And I have a good understanding of how it works, but I've been blessed with I've got a decent recall. And so if I take the time to really understand something, I can leave it in there and the cobwebs could form, but I could recall it later at years. Like, no, that engine actually, those weren't good years for that car engine. Actually, you want these years were better because, how they modified their hot V or whatever, right? So I enjoy cars. I enjoy anything that really, if I can see the artistry in the development, like, I get real fascinated. Lately I've been kind of watching chefs, living in Las Vegas, we have a lot of great restaurants, and understanding what makes them go. A lot of the times the food industry and the restaurants at the high level is a lot like football. They've got a coach back there, and a lot of the times they all have really similar ingredients. There's a bunch of great ingredients in this town, and what makes those restaurants great is the people. It's the team. It's the culture. Are they on the same page? Like, Gordon Ramsay, he seems so mean. And I'm like, dude, that's Nick Saban behind the grill. What are you talking about? It's like the correlations are crazy, so all that stuff is fascinating to me.
Well, that's awesome. I have a lot of respect for chefs. I've worked in restaurants during undergrad and grad school, and I've always had a lot of respect for them. Funny story time, man. I know you've been around some characters. What's something you could share with us? You're a teammate with Marshawn Lynch. You're a teammate of Aaron Rodgers, right?
Yep.
So what funny story you got for me?
Funny story. As a player, we used to they weren't called initiations back then because they were harmless, right? So they would always take your pads or your clothes and string them up along the top of the locker room. And, we were in the base of the stadium. So our locker room, the ceiling's 30 feet high, but there were some good gymnasts in the group, and they would climb up and your shoulder pads would be 30 feet above your locker suspended, and if you had some embarrassing chonies, those were up there too. So, so you had that going on, and I was being a freshman. I wasn't going to take that. You weren't going to embarrass me like that. So I went down to Ace Hardware, got me some high tension twine, and out in Memorial Stadium, Cal Stadium, are these huge flagpoles. And some of them are, you fly the American colors, then you fly the school colors, the conference colors, just old school traditional flagpoles going up and around the stadium. So I take that twine, I take all their stuff, and I suspend their gear about 50 feet above the practice field. So the next day, where's my shoulder pads? Oh, go check outside. And I did have some help from some of the older guys because I couldn't do that task on my own. And so then they responded with, because they couldn't lose to the freshmen, right? So they went and they turned my locker. They got coop wire, chicken wire. They went to the pet store. I had a full-on zoo in my locker. I had snakes, I had chickens, I had rats as soon as I opened my top little security door. So at that point, Coach Tedford came in. He's like, you lose. This is over. We're not doing another one up of this. He's like, I've got all these animals here. We're at Berkeley. So I got PETA up my ass. Who knows what we're going to do with these animals? We can't just throw them away. We got people coming up to adopt these chickens later today. We were pretty creative back then.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my mind's flooding with all the different stories I've been around, the different scenarios I've been around. Because it wouldn't end well.
There's no doubt.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate your time, man. This has been the longest one. Love reading your content that you put out. Always very interesting, and I appreciate what you're doing for the game, man.
Absolutely, absolutely. I appreciate you, Coach, and I'm sure we'll talk later.
Yes, sir. Thanks, brother.
Have a good one.
Thanks for joining us for Football IQ presented by American Football IQ. If you want to help your players see the game better, think faster, and understand more, go check out American Football IQ and what they're building for players, coaches, and parents. That's at AmericanFootballIQ.com or click the link in the description. Follow all we're doing at Coach and Coordinator Network and follow us on X at Coach K. Grabowski.